to Brains and Birdies. I'm Allie Knight, PGA and LPGA certified instructor, and I'm here with Dr. Mark Harmon, sports performance specialist and psychiatrist. And today we're going to talk about SMART goals. Yep, the SMART goals that sometimes aren't so smart.
That's exactly right.
So let's just start with the simple question. Why do we set goals at all?
So, goal setting itself has decades and decades, thousands of hours and thousands of studies of research showing that it improves performance and it improves effective learning, right? That's where that's where kind of goal setting starts, is on that premise. Right? Now, how goal setting itself, the history of goal setting itself is, you have a number of contributors that kind of got us to where we are now. So, for example, you have Locke and Latham, who came up with goal setting theory itself. And basically, what their research and what their career has told us is that goals result in better performance, right? So, kind of that simple link. Now, for them, however, they found specific goals do provide better performance improvement, right? But specific, I want to make sure and divorce from the specific of SMART, right?
Okay.
Because they didn't use SMART goals. They use specific goals, which is something very different. While specific is a component of SMART, they did not use SMART goals.
Okay.
Okay. So, and basically what it does is they found in goal setting, you direct attention, it increases persistence of learning, persistence of task, skill improvement, and then also it kind of increases strategy development. So you're more likely to develop a strategy if you have a goal, which is a good thing, right? As opposed to if you don't, right? So
Right.
that's kind of the fathers, so to speak, of goal setting theory itself. Right? Now, to kind of add into that, what undergirds that initial theory is, for example, the psychologist Bandura, who came up with the self-efficacy theory. Right? And so self-efficacy just simply means when you achieve goals, and specifically Bandura speaks, and the research shows a process goal, which is a type of goal, which we'll kind of talk about a little later. But process goals themselves show much better goal, improvement, performance improvement specifically. Doing all this kind of just results in an increased self-efficacy, right? So self-efficacy is just kind of a fancy psychological, psychiatric term for my own sense of self-confidence, my own sense of I have the ability to do things, I believe in myself. And so,
Right.
which oddly enough, in another section that we're going to do at some point as well, we talked about doing resiliency, right? So goals have also been linked to individuals that have better goal setting and fit goal settings to the skill and performance they want to have much more resiliency in trouble. So to put it in easily in golf terms, they scramble better,
Mm,
right? They
right.
scramble better.
Okay.
They have
Yeah. Yeah.
better scrambling performance.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I mean, there's actually a lot of really interesting research around this kind of topic. It's for me not quite talked about enough. It's brushed over, and everyone says, "Oh, goals are so vital, so vital." Okay, so is oxygen. What can you tell me about it? Oxygen actually can be highly corrosive. Why is it not for us? Right? We need it to survive. So,
Right. Yeah.
I not to digress. It's just okay. Thank you for acknowledging the importance. Step one. Step two, how do you apply it?
Right.
Right. And last but not least, you have, and this one is, I don't want to say it's minor, but it's the one that probably doesn't get talked about or thought the most, just because, it's kind of to some extent self-evident. But they did the actual research proving it, was some researchers called DC and Ryan. Right. So DC and Ryan, they did theory of self-determination. So Bandura was self-efficacy, DC and Ryan are self-determination, right? So what does that mean? Again, it's kind of a fancy psychological term for being able or feeling in control of your own destiny, so to speak, in terms relating it specifically to a goal and an outcome that you're trying to achieve. You feel the self-efficacy of Bandura, and DC and Ryan kind of talk about, so you feel more in control, which can lead to a lot of different things, right? So it when it specifically aligns to more of an intrinsic motivation, this is the component for instructors, players, high performers, period. That's probably the most important takeaway from theirs, which is aligning a goal with an intrinsic motivation. So something that just naturally kind of motivates you, making sure your goals align with that. You have a significantly higher probability of sustaining that goal and reaching that goal than if, for example, I make a goal to hit 70% of fairways, but I really don't care how I hit my driver. I care about how I roll the ball or how I chip the ball. Well, setting a goal that's not in alignment with something I value means that goal is going to be much harder for me to continue to strive for, even if it's a necessary goal, right?
Yeah.
So
then that makes me think of like a parent making a goal for their child
bingo,
or something.
bingo, and that is exactly where that is. So you nailed it, right? So that is exactly what that means and where it goes, right? Because using the same example I have, such as I have to hit 70% of fairways with my driver, which if I can do that, then stand back, I'm winning all the tournaments, right? I mean, good luck to me. It would be my answer to that. I can still have that goal, but I need to link it to something that's valuable to me. So, for example, and obviously I'm being a bit hyperbolic here because yes, I do care about how I drive the ball, right? But if my goal is just simply drive the ball better, I haven't linked it to anything that's important to me, as opposed to, well, for example, I play with my daughter a lot, and we kind of have this fun competition. Her goal is to finally beat dad, right? Which she has done once or twice so far. I'm very proud of her. So if my goal is hit more fairways or to outdrive her, that's an intrinsic value motivator to me. I'm much more likely to work harder on my driving, right? And so you can take a goal that's even not an intrinsic motivator, and you can mold it and attach it, and that's the key to that. That's otherwise, because you do have to motivation. Yes, and you do have to wonder. So, like, why would you even mention DC and Ryan, right? But that's the main reason, is because what they've taught us, and what I do see a lot of instructors or parents or even players not doing, is how have you linked it to something they care about? Tough love. I'm not someone who is against tough love, but neither does tough love actually a lot of times be effective, except for preventing a behavior. It's very, very, very poor to build a skill or change it or make a new behavior, right? So you have to, and that's simply how the brain works, and we'll talk about that, right? But so to simply set a goal for the sake of setting a goal, you're actually not going to be very effective. You're wiping. To have your why behind the reason. Exactly. Exactly. Otherwise, you kind of wipe out all the stuff that's beneficial that we've learned through the science. And so that's one of the main reasons I always kind of pull DC and Ryan into there, is we have to kind of think of that. And I think your example of kind of the child and the parent is perfect. I see that one a lot myself. Yeah, for sure. So are there different types of goals? There are. To kind of lead into that, there's three main types, which we'll briefly just outline. There's process goal, performance goal, and outcome goal, right? And there is actually a clear winner there when it comes to performance, sports, athletics, particularly elite athletes. There is a clear winner there as to which one we should be utilizing, and that is process goals.
Okay.
Right. Now, kind of taking a baby step back, there is even a neurobiological reason process goals work over the other types of goals, right? And so, to kind of undergird that, here's how the brain works and what the brain's doing when we set the proper goal for the task that we're trying to achieve. Whether it's sports performance, whether it's, making an objective in a company, or whether it's, having X number of students perform in the top whatever, right? The first thing is when we both set a goal, but more importantly, when we accomplish a goal, right? We set off a pathway that's called the dopamine pathway, right? So the dopamine pathway, a lot of people will know it. If you have any type of connection in any way to kind of addiction sciences, even if it's you have someone with addiction in your family or something like that, and you've had to learn a little bit about it, right? The dopamine is one of the primary molecules in the brain. So you have a number of molecules in the brain. Each one kind of serves a little bit of a different purpose. They activate or deactivate, etc. So dopamine is one of those that it's a molecule in the brain that makes us feel good. It makes us happy, right? It's a little bit of the rush, specifically when you look at an addiction context, right? But in a day-to-day, it's in it like addiction, just like most things, is a system that's been abused or gone out of whack. Okay, so the dopamine system and that reward system is a natural system. We all have it. We all should have it. We all need it, right? It's just not just abusing that system is where the problems come in. So if we're of course, in my context, I'm talking about the normal use of the system, right? So it makes you feel good, but more importantly, this is what is from the neuroscience part is the important part. I find people don't talk about a lot, right? And I don't know why, but so dopamine is one of the molecules in your brain that when it's utilized and released, it actually strengthens pathways for learning.
Oh, wow.
So when you're trying to learn a skill and dopamine starts to be introduced because you feel good, it actually strengthens that pathway. And at the end of the day, whether it's a swing, a putt, or anything else, that's just simply a specific pathway in your brain that we talked about kind of in the neurobiology stuff that is getting more and more ingrained. And the way I will often explain it to people is when you first are learning a skill, it's like driving through a forest without a path. You're having to literally forage that path. When the next 3 or 4 people come behind you, it becomes a small trail.
Right.
Well, when more people start to use it, it becomes a gravel road.
Right.
When more people, it becomes a single lane paved road. As you use it more and more and more, suddenly it's a highway. Right? So in that swing, we were talking about that automatic behavior. You've went from foraging a trail to creating a highway to that specific swing behavior. Well, dopamine is one of the key ingredients to say, hey, let's build this highway. It doesn't need to be a dirt road. It needs to be a highway. And so dopamine is one of those molecules in your brain that help you do that. Well, when you goal set, the act of goal setting, remember, DC self-determination, Bandura's self-efficacy, right?
Right.
Those make us feel good about ourselves. They increase confidence. They increase all these other things. Well, that is starting to introduce dopamine into that behavior, which is why goal setting is so important. Not only the achievement of goals, which I don't know about you, but I'm very happy when I achieve a goal. There's nothing more satisfying than putting that check mark right next to the to-do.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
Oh, yeah, right? It's like,
Definitely.
you feel it. You're feeling me.
yeah.
Yeah, I know you are. It's just, trust me, that's some dopamine right there. That's just a dopamine rush, right?
Yeah.
And so, and that goes for everybody, right?
Right.
But not only that satisfaction of checking off to-do list, or that first time you sink a 10-foot putt
Yeah.
after you've been working so hard to improve your putting, and that first time it rolls in, it's like, oh.
Yeah, it's a beginner golfer out on the range and they finally hit that good one.
Exactly.
And
it's like,
that's the one that keeps you coming back right there.
bingo,
Yeah.
right? Bingo. And so that's all dopamine. That's the dopamine system.
Right.
Okay. So that from a neurobiology standpoint, that's one of the reasons goals can be like, it's not just a psychology thing. It's a neurobiology, neurophysiology thing as well. And so, the other part of it is, so to learn any type of motor skills involve feedback loops, right? So remember when we were talking about neurobiology, for example, I talked about how you go from the prefrontal cortex to the sensory motor to the basal ganglia, then to the cerebellum, and then it shifts it over to the parietal. Okay, so that parietal, that cerebellum, all of that, those are the feedback loops in that motor automatic behavior.
Right.
Which because they're shifting sensory information, they're shifting balance, sight, smell, sound, all of those things. And they are providing that feedback loop to hone that fine motor skill, which ends up being the proper grained swing.
Yeah.
So goal setting and motor skills go hand in hand. So the goal setting basically kind of enhances those feedback loops, right? So if I set a goal to be on plane with my take back, then I will activate those feedback loops that adjust my backswing and keep it on plane, because that's my goal. That's what I'm shifting my attention to. All this stuff starts to connect and run together. It's just like Locke and Latham said, I'm shifting my attention and focus to this, and I'm being more persistent about doing it. Then that's activating my self-efficacy. I'm feeling better about it. I'm doing better, more rec swings. I'm being self-determined. So all of these kind of marry in together, right? Now, as an instructor, as a player, these are the things I find fascinating, which I know more than once I've caught you nodding off as I'm getting, excited, and trust me, my daughters do the same. But this is the kind of stuff that excites me. I find it just absolutely fascinating. But I appreciate it. Not everybody does. That's okay. You're not supposed to. Just like my wife is a tax accountant, and she will come home and talk about 1099 420s, and I just glaze over, and I'm like, so I get it. But it is important to kind of understand these and what's happening. You don't have to memorize all this stuff. Just like when I talked about the brain, don't worry about the brain parts.
Right. Yeah.
Just know this is how it works.
Well, going back to the process and performance and outcome goals, and you said something along the lines, process goals are the most important.
Yes.
Explain that.
Okay. So we'll look at that from two different standpoints. So the first one is let's define a little more. What is a process goal versus a performance goal versus an outcome goal? Okay. And the name itself tells you exactly what it's doing. Right. So for example, a performance goal, something like a SMART goal, right, where you're trying to hit a very specific achievement. For example, I mentioned 70% of fairways, right? So it's very performance outcome driven, but not just outcome.
Right.
Right. So as opposed to an outcome goal is just that. It's focused on an outcome. So win the club championship. A little too vague, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you think about it, an outcome goal is kind of your vague. I want to play in the PGA.
Okay.
I want to play in the LPGA.
Right.
Right. The next one is going to be a performance goal. I'm going to win 70% of the golf tournaments I enter this year to go to the PGA. Right. And so then you kind of have one that really for sports and athletics, right, shines above the others. And it's not just an opinion. There are numerous research trials out there that have shown this. So, for example, in 2024, there was what was called a meta-analysis. So, you have different levels of trials, and I won't burden you with all the specific details, but you have something called a systemic review, which is you take a few trials and you kind of look at what the common theme is for those trials. Then you have the next level up, which is what's called meta-analysis. So it takes all the trials in a specific topic or specific area, and then it puts them through its own trial methodology and looks for patterns. What are the common, what are the outcomes? It's a very high respected level of trial because it really points out these were not good data. This is good data, but overall, this is what we're showing, right? So this 2024 meta-analysis looked at what kind of goals have the greatest efficacy or the best results in specifically sports and high elite performers, right? So it wasn't all elite performers, but kind of the majority were shifted that way. But there were your common amateurs and some things like that, but most of these were competitive level athletes, right? And so all the studies that looked at that specific population, they said which one of these three types actually statistically shows the best performance associated with it.
Yeah.
Process goals, bar none, right? And so process goals are just that. You're focused on the process and your controllables. Right? So you teach my daughter, and so you what's the one thing you hear me tell my daughter constantly?
Probably just trust the process.
Trust the process. She I get it. I was young. Patience obviously was not a genetic factor that I had and could pass on to her. But she gets so outcome driven.
Yeah.
And I have to try to bring her back and say, no, you have to trust the process. You can't control once that club hits the ball. You're done.
Right.
Because from a scientific standpoint, if you try to tell me anything you do after an impact, I'm going to tell you you must believe in magic.
Right.
And fairies. Because no. Telekinesis isn't real. It's just in Marvel movies. Right? So that impact is your final standpoint. So what you do have the opportunity to influence is all the controllables until then, right? So what's the process? Trusting that process, have that process goal, the goal of, so for example, a common example for that would be keep the swing a smooth, even tempo. I can control that.
Right. Yep.
Right? I can control that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't control if a gust of wind comes up and blows me out of the fairway.
No.
But and I can even take the wind where I'm standing. It could be markedly different 100 yards down the fairway, but I have no idea of that, and I have no way to measure that. So process goals are much more focused on our controllables.
Okay.
Which is one of the reasons why they're more effective.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you actually can address the things that you can. But I thought it was very interesting. There were a couple of different things that showed up. Goal setting, period, no matter what type it was, had a huge impact on performance. So the group that did not have goal setting statistically performed significantly lower than someone who did. So any goal setting is better than none. But in this study, and then a study I'll talk about in another few moments, that oddly enough was also in 2024, process goals showed very clear statistical advantage over all other types of goals.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
including the well-known SMART goals.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that the process goal is SMART goals
No,
then? No,
no,
different.
no, very different. Yeah, very, very different. So your SMART goals are your performance goals,
Okay.
right? So
Okay. Yep.
one of the things that people don't don't realize. So SMART goals obviously are very ubiquitous. You hear them
Mhm.
everywhere, right? So there was a time when I was an executive in kind of the biotech, biopharm industry, and particularly in business, that they are everywhere, right?
Mhm.
And even and what I then found is when I started transitioning and kind of found this passion for helping elite athletes and things like that with the skills I had, I started finding everywhere I went, people were still only talked about SMART goals,
Mhm.
and and then they would get frustrated because they couldn't understand the reason their performance wasn't improving well. Well, one of the things people don't realize is so SMART goals were originally created by a guy by the name of George Dorian in the early 80s, 1981, 82, somewhere around there. So Dorian was an operationals, like VP of operations type thing for a power company. That's where he came up with SMART goals. It was in the context of helping that company improve performance. Notice I very clearly said company.
Mhm.
I did not
Right.
say individual.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's where what people don't understand. SMART goals, it's easy, it's an easy acronym to remember,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So they took it and then started applying it to individuals. And that's where things, in my opinion, from a psychological, neurobiological, performance expert standpoint, in a professional opinion, that's where things unravel. Is you tried to take it would be the equivalent of taking a putter and trying to make it a common for driving the ball.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
fit. They just don't fit,
Yeah.
right? And that's SMART goals in athletics. They don't fit.
Wow.
Like to the point where I actually ended up creating my own version of goal setting, which is a little more of the well, not a little more. It's more. It is a process type of goal. The only difference is for me, I actually took the neurobiology and created a goal setting system where you link the needed
Mm.
neurobiological component to the
Cool.
skill you're trying to learn,
Yeah.
right? And it served kind of the elite athletes, high performers very, very well.
Mhm.
So I did this because of a couple different reasons. One, all I ever heard was SMART goals, SMART goals, SMART goals, right?
Yeah.
And what you remember, what does SMART goals stand for?
Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time oriented.
Time oriented. That last one is a little bit of the problem. Okay.
Yes.
And people have even tried to, particularly in performance and sports, they've even tried to modify SMART goals a little bit. Have you heard of the smarter goals?
Yes.
Okay, so they
Yes.
just added evaluated and reviewed on the end of it, and somehow that magically made it better. Yeah, no, it didn't. Uh, so, the a SMART goal would be I want to hit from the fairway onto the green 75 to 80% of the time within the next 3 months, right?
Right. What if you don't
And
achieve it?
how many golfers do you know that can go from I can't hit the fairway off the tee at all to I'm going to land it 10 feet from the hole within 3 months?
Mhm. Yeah.
The realistic part failed.
Yep.
First and foremost, the time dependency part failed.
Yep.
You bring up an excellent point. You just demotivated yourself when you failed.
Mhm.
That self-efficacy fell, that self-determination fell, your motivation fell, everything fell.
Yep.
So, you have literally set yourself up to fail, thinking you've set yourself up to achieve.
Yep. Mhm.
That's the problem I recognized and said we have to address and fix this.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah. And even in like my teaching certification for instruction training, we had to set a SMART goal. So we had to give a lesson. We went there, met a random student. We had someone evaluating. You had to check the boxes,
Yep.
and if you didn't do the SMART goal, you would fail.
Yeah.
That was the most important part of giving the lesson.
Checking that box.
Which makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
you want to set a goal, but at the same time, if I wasn't specific enough of we're going to get the ball in the air and we're going to hit it 3 out of 5 times before we leave today,
50 feet or more.
you know, even if
Yeah.
they didn't achieve it, it didn't matter. It was just the fact that I set the goal, which is kind of.
And that is exactly what I came across. And you were not the only instructor that has, for lack of a better word, bemoaned that.
Right. It's like you give a great lesson, they feel great about it, but you didn't do.
But
the
you still
SMART
somehow
goal.
fail that.
You fail the SMART goal though, even though it was a great lesson.
Yeah, and that's because they weren't smart in trying to force SMART goals.
Right.
They were focusing entirely on the wrong thing. In my professional opinion, you're not interested in the improvement of your student at that point. You're interested in checking boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm going to recommend you give my wife a call because accountants love to check boxes. That's their job. We are teachers. We help mold individuals. Box checking will get you nowhere because we're not machines.
Yeah.
Right. So the use of those SMART goals is not very smart. Right? And so, and again, to kind of just briefly call back to the history a little bit, and to me, this really kind of makes part of it. Like to me, I went, oh yeah, I think I really see why this didn't work. Do you know what the original designation of the A in SMART was?
No, I don't know.
Assignable.
Mm.
Not achievable.
Oh.
Assignable.
Huh.
Specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, time dependent.
Yeah.
Right. Then somewhere along the way, someone took it and said, well, we'll just change it to achievable. You haven't changed the nature of the system.
No.
The system is to measure the operational improvement of a company, not change a person.
Yeah.
And so they've been misaligned. It was not malicious. It was not intentional. It just has been misadopted. Right. And what we've found since in my opinion that misadoption is, SMART goals are like everything else. They have their strengths, particularly in an operational setting. If a CEO were to come to me, has come to me in the past and says, I really can't seem to get my company to get here or get there, you need a SMART goal. Right. Let's make a SMART goal.
Yeah.
For your organization and your company so that your teams can have something to strive for. Mm-hmm. Right. Whereas if an instructor comes and says, I'm having this trouble with a student, or a student comes to me, we'll even say a CEO comes to me and says, I have this particular vice president that I know he or she can do amazing things, but they are not performing. Don't use a SMART goal. Because all you're going to do is motivate them, devalue them, set them up for failure, and they're not going to likely achieve, which then spirals you down. Right. And I'm sure you've seen those students that spiral. Yeah. Right. And so, because SMART goals are very, very good in the sense that they are very structured, they're very focused. Those are good things, right? Vague goals, not good. Specific goals, good. Right? You can measure the outcome. You can.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But can then offer accountability for that outcome. Yeah. If it's reviewed. Right. Which I find a lot of people love to set the goal but never review it. Yeah. Because that's where it's an outcome goal. Mm-hmm. Did I meet the measure? Did I meet the metric? I thought the point was improvement, not checking a box. right? So
Yeah.
that's where they start to fail, right? So of course, their limitations for, and I have to keep kind of reminding myself, all of you at home, wherever you are listening to this, I am speaking from the perspective of elite performers, athletes, instructors, students learning the game, all of those things. So don't take what I have and misapply it in a different circumstance. But the limitations SMART goals have in those contexts are they are way too outcome driven and pay no attention to the process. Right? So, or they minimize process. They minimize the controllables the student can have and only have them focus on outcomes.
Yeah.
Not good. Dopamine's not going to flow very well.
Yeah.
Right? They are far too rigid and lack flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Golf is a slow, steady, deliberate game, lifestyle, learning process. Put whatever ending on that you want to.
Mm-hmm.
If you are too hyper focused on outcome, have no flexibility, SMART goals themselves have very little emotional engagement, so motivation immediately goes down with them. You are putting everything here in that prefrontal reasoning cortex and not enough in the rest of the brain. They are not very good for skills learning, only for measuring. Right. So to some extent, I even see this kind of in the school system setting sometimes, where it's like, you really aren't interested in teaching my child anything. You're interested in what their performance on a test was. Well, I know people that got straight A's on tests, but I wouldn't let them change a Band-Aid.
True.
I know people that barely scrape by that are some of the highest level practicing world expert positions you'll ever meet. Their intelligence almost is unmeasurable to some extent. That outcome, we want to equate it with performance, but it's not. It's an outcome.
Yeah.
And so that's where their kind of limitations and strengths are there. They're great for short-term goals.
Yeah.
Right. So a SMART goal is great for a single day putting practice. I want to putt 8 out of 10 balls within 3. I want to lag them 3 feet within the hole to the hole. By the end of my practice, sequentially. Right. So we can be, we can start to kind of drill down. They're not good for overall improvement. So even for some of that short-term stuff in practice, I don't actually recommend them a lot of the times, unless someone just really has something very, very, very specific. And the reason is this is, again, a 2024 review, the one I mentioned earlier, they actually took specific goals, SMART goals, and non-specific process goals, and they compared them. And they had one other group, which was didn't have any goals at all group, the control group, right? And then they set this trial in motion, and at the end they came back and measured, and they said, okay, and again, this was for athletes. So they then took this trial and they said, okay, let's see which one had the greatest impact, statistically measuring, on performance improvement. The process goals, which were what they called the non-specific, which I didn't really like the verbiage because it wasn't really, it was a specific goal. It was just a process-oriented goal,
Right.
Which they described in the study, but they just kind of labeled it wrong. But gosh knows I've done that too. So the process goals, the ones that were not rigid with the SMART goal type of structure, showed markedly and significantly more improvement in athletic performance. What was really fascinating, and this is one of the reasons I say SMART goals sometimes, particularly for performance people, SMART goals are not smart, right? And that's because they statistically show SMART goal had a negligible improvement versus no goals at all
Oh, wow.
for athletic performance.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you really want your students to perform and improve, you have to change how you're setting goals and move towards a more process oriented. And
Yeah.
we've talked about it, at some point I may possibly even we can sit and I'll even explain my goal setting system, which for me is proprietary. I also am more than happy to kind of share that a little bit with people as well, because at the end of the day, I just want people to get better and love this game as much as I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Definitely.
that's what
Definitely.
kind of the theory behind it is. That's the neurobiology of goal setting. That's the actual research and evidence that we've seen in goal setting, and then those three different types of goals. And if nothing else, I would say again, I'm not bad mouthing SMART goals. In the
Right.
proper context, SMART goals are fantastic
Yeah.
for golfers or any other athlete or high performer. SMART goals really aren't going to get you where you want to go unless your goal is a very, very short term based goal. If you have a long term goal like golf, I want to improve my score by 3 strokes, 5 strokes, whatever it is. You need more of a process oriented goal. One, to sustain motivation. Two, to show and have more effectiveness in improving.
Right. Yeah. So bottom line, drop your SMART goal and go to a process goal.
Exactly. Unless the SMART goal is for something, like I said, very short
Very
term and
short
specific.
term, you can do the
But
SMART goal.
yeah,
But
even
overall,
then, like I said, there are other ones that you could use.
right.
And go towards more of a process goal.
Yeah. Perfect. Great. Well, I think we covered a lot, and
We did.
it's an important thing. You've
It
got
is.
to have your goal setting if you want to improve and you want to get your golf game better. It's
Absolutely.
just part of it.
And like I said when we started with the research in the beginning,
Yeah.
just the act of setting a goal.
Yes, and all the best athletes in the world set their goals every year.
And one of the things that I have found since I started this career quite some time ago, working with elite performers, all elite performers, whether it's an elite athlete, whether it's a high performing executive, whether it's a high performing teacher, whoever it is, they either innately get this or someone along the line has taught them good goal setting skills. And so they have really good goal setting skills.
Yes.
And to the point where I've seen even some of them, they'll even call it a SMART goal because someone somewhere told them it was a SMART goal.
Right.
But the goal actually was a process goal.
Oh.
And sometimes, every once in a while, I'll point that out. But I'm like, yeah, it's not really a SMART goal.
Yeah.
That's a process goal.
Awesome.
And that's what I mean by they kind of naturally get it. So I think all of us that
sometimes
want
we
to
do it and don't even realize what we're doing.
Whereas those of us who we want to improve, we want to get better,
Yeah.
we would be very well served to begin learning and shifting towards a process type of goal setting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, good stuff. And this is Brains and Birdies. Make sure to like and subscribe to our channel to hear more.
See you later.